Welcome to this Warriors Life podcast, season 7, episode 2. We've got our first guest of 2025 and a very special one. I've been waiting a long time to have this fella on the podcast. A huge influence on me and my work and a bit of a hero of mine, I don't mind saying. David Middleton, the GOAT of rugby league historians and statisticians. Welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you, Will. Pleasure to be on.
We've got you during your quiet time of the year. You're obviously flat out as soon as the season starts to ramp up, and plenty of postseason and work as well with the rugby league annual, which I'll talk about shortly. But yeah, how's your summer been, mate? Just baking away in Sydney there?
It's been quite cruisy. It's been good since the annual was done just before Christmas. So the last couple of weeks have been nice and quiet, and I spent a couple of days watching some Test cricket, and that was down in Melbourne for one of the days of the boxing test, and a couple of days in Sydney.
Nice.
So it was a good time.
Yeah, good stuff. And just for a bit of background on David, if you haven't not familiar with his name, you certainly would be affected by the brilliant work that he's done over the past, what was it, 40 plus odd years, David?
Let's not count.
He kind of burst into rugby league consciousness as a school kid. Still did Rugby League Week's book of records, detailing every Australian representative since 1908, something that never really been done before. A journalist, feature writer for Rugby League Week for many years, and then started his own information agency, League Information Services, in 1992. Came on board with Channel 9 as their Rugby League statistician in 1997. You probably would have heard Ray Warren and co referring to Middo during their calls, feeding all those brilliant bits of history and information through to them during their broadcasts. A wonderful author, including a centenary of rugby league with the late great Ian Heads. Came out in 2008. Just an incredible book, that one. And probably his work that's closest to my heart, the rugby league official rugby league annual, which he's been producing since the 1987 season. So by my count, this year was the 38th edition, David.
Yeah, I believe 38. Yes.
Yeah, that's quite incredible. Now you can just see it over this shoulder. So I'm just that's my full collection of the 38 editions there. They get a hell of a workout in my office. Plenty of dog ears and that sort of thing. Now I'm just going to bring something up so you can get a better look at just the scope of this work since 1987. How do we do this? Just one moment. There we go. So that's just a still of all of them on my shelves. The ones lying down are the first 5 editions, the hardcovers, and then the sort of smaller digest size ones from the, I think, 92 season through to 2003 season, and then the one that's still going at the moment, the sort of A4 size, almost magazine style, since from 2004 to present. But just an incredible record of every season. People like me and just absolutely froth on it, but it should be a must for every rugby league fan, really. I guess, David, how does it feel to think you've been doing this for 38 years?
Yeah, it's a long time, isn't it? I did start very young. I must point that out. I'm not that old, but look, it's a lot of work, but it's just it's something that's really fitted in with my working life, I guess you'd have to say. Like it underpins all the work I do with Channel 9. So it forces me to keep the records up to date, and it's been it's been such a fun ride doing it, and learn so much along the way. You learn a lot about publishing and printing and distributing and all the rest of it along the way as well. But look, it's been fantastic. I've loved every minute of doing it. It is a long time, 38 years, you've got to say.
And obviously a big challenge with COVID. You sort of published the annual in conjunction with Big League for many, many years, and obviously worked on it with their staff. 2020 must have been a massive scramble to sort of get it to go ahead, and then obviously the challenges of sort of being more or less an independent kind of publication for the 4 seasons since then as well.
Yeah, that's true. Like it nearly didn't happen in 2020, and it was really only through the persistence of Neil Cadigan, who's a former colleague of mine and an author and historian and a former editor of Big League as well. His persistence helped get it across the line really that year, and it was a little bit scaled down, and we did it late, but we still got the thing out. And I guess that's one of the things that I'm most proud of as well, that we've come through the Super League war, we've come through COVID, and we've still managed to get the thing out. So, there's been a couple of big challenges along the way, but hopefully we can keep it going and give the fans. There's a lot of there's core fans. I'd have to say it's not a huge groundswell, you'd have to say, but there are dedicated supporters who just love to get it every year.
Yeah, I'm sure you see the same names pop up every year that just have to get it as soon as it comes out. It's like a second Christmas for me when that turns up in the post in Amberley. Here's the cover of this year's, or two different covers to choose from. We'll put the links on where you can get this as well in the show notes. But yeah, Panthers all over it, as it has been for a few years now. And a key feature I think everyone looks forward to. Your top 5 players of the year. For me, I count it as sort of one of the core, individual markers, I guess, along with Daly and Middo and all that sort of thing. To be named as one of your top 5 players of the year is something to be proud of for these players. Only handful of Warriors over the years have got the nod. Stacey Jones 2002, Steve Price in 2007, Manu Vatuvei, a rare winger to end up in the top 5 in 2008. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck in 2018, and of course Sean Johnson in 2023. But how much do you agonise over that top 5 everywhere, David?
It's hard. There are some years where they just jump out at you, and maybe 3 of the 5 jump out, and a couple of the others are a little bit more contentious, I suppose. But I think once I've done all the writing of the reports on all the club games, and then done all the Origin and all the international, it sort of comes into focus a lot better for me. That I've covered all aspects of the season, and that's what the top 5 is about. It's not just club football; it's also finals football, and it's also rep football. So yeah, and this was a direct steal, I'd have to say, from Wisden's Cricketers Annual. Right at the very start, Ian Heads and Gary Lester were the 2 that got me going on the annuals back in 1987, and they wanted to produce an annual that had a tradition behind it, and there were a couple of ideas that they brought to me from Wisden in having those top 5 players, and I think Wisden only select those 5 players once, I believe. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it's an annual that's had a tradition of 150 odd years. I don't know if the Rugby League annual will get to 150 years, but maybe someone else will take it over once I'm finished. But yeah, that was one of those ideas that came directly from Wisden Cricketers Annual, and I got to say I love that publication as well. I've always loved leafing through it and finding oddities in there and different, some of the ideas that I've got in the annual have come from there as well, just from flicking through pages of Wisden over time.
Yeah, it's so the top 5 has been going since your first annual from the 87 season, as well as your team of the year. So it's great to see those traditions have been there since day one. Plenty of features in there, a great roundup on every club and every game of the season, including all the rep stuff. Now with NRLW as well, heaps of coverage in these new annuals of the NRLW and women's internationals. An incredible resource just for all the records that you could want. Not every year now, but previous editions, every single Australian representative, every Origin representative, and a few of them have had full list of Kiwi representatives as well. So just an amazing resource, and probably more important than ever to have this sort of hard copy reference and record of every year, in this digital age. And it can get a bit lost, I think, that this sort of sense of history. There's no rugby league magazines every week to sort of chronicle every week of every season, and the annual does it perfectly. So long may it continue, mate.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I like the fact that it's all together in one place. I mean, I know you can find just about any piece of information now online, but I just think to have it all together in one place, I think it makes it easier. I don't know if I'm being an old fogey by saying that, but I like it that way, and I know a lot of people do.
And I will want to go back to when you started, and there's some sort of common threads, I guess, from my teenage years of being a bit of a stats nerd and history nerd, and just sort of putting together lists and tables and everything just for the sake of it. But your work as a schoolboy still to put together that list of every Australian representative, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're kind of responsible for. I think rugby league had a reputation of poor record keeping for a long time, and you sort of dragged it out of the dark ages and made sure that rugby league had a solid record of just even first grade games, and how many games people had played, tries they'd scored, and all that sort of thing.
Well, when I started, people tried to tell me that rugby league wasn't a game of numbers, that it was not. It was different to cricket. Cricket, people sit around and do the scoring and are religious at keeping the records in cricket. And they said a rugby league's just not like that. It's never been that kind of game. But, I always thought differently about it. And there was so much history that I found fascinating. And it was a hobby, I guess, to start with. And I used to travel into the New South Wales Rugby League headquarters and look through all of their old magazine or all their old rugby league news programs that were in bound volumes, and they had a certain smell to them. You'd smell the age about them. But just to read about some of the old players, the fact that Tedder Courtney, who was one of the first Kangaroos, kept playing long enough to play alongside his son in first grade for Western Suburbs in 1924. And there were just so many fascinating pieces of information that had never seen the light of day. So, if they hadn't in a long, long time. And, I really enjoyed trying to bring some of those stories to light and discovering more about the history. And I still do that. I still find it fascinating to find information on players. And there's more people now who have the same interest. I've come across half a dozen or so people who are, some of them are involved with clubs as historians, but they also have this fascination on digging up information on some of the former players. If you have a look at West's Archives website, if you Google West's Archives, you can have a look at some of the extraordinary research and work that they've done there. There's a fellow by the name of Brent Knowles who's mostly responsible for the biographical information. I came across him a few years ago when I was just hunting for information, and I was looking for some information on some West players because my records for one particular year, I looked at 1910. They were the worst of any club of any year because there was no first names. There were very little information on the players at all. And I discovered that Brent was doing the same thing. He was trying to find information on these players, and it's amazing what he's found. There was a guy whose surname was Healy, Healy or EY. We didn't know what his first name or initial was. He played one game for West, and Brent has discovered so much information on this guy, and he was involved in World War I. He was wounded, and then he helped set up a wounded soldiers league in North Sydney after the war. And he was quite a prominent person. He was disabled. He was in a wheelchair, lived the rest of his life in a wheelchair. But from this player who played one first grade game with virtually no information on him, Brent has found like 1,000 words to put on the website. It's fascinating, and I encourage anyone to have a look at it. that is the standard, really, I think, for all the clubs to be chasing in terms of their history, because it's really something special.
Yeah, certainly a lot harder for those foundation clubs in pre-World War II clubs. Obviously, for the Warriors, it's a little easier coming in '95 and all that information at your fingertips. But it must have been an enormous task for you to do all of that in that sort of pre-digital age. Everything you're sort of writing it down, I guess, by hand and then typing it up.
And I was at the library in the days of trawling through microfilm readers at the library and copying pages there. And yeah, a lot of it was handwritten before about 1987. I think that was when I got my first computer. And then it started from there, being able to digitize a lot of stuff and save a lot of time. Learning how to use Excel spreadsheets and the rest of it, and all my work's still on Excel. I haven't gone into the database line, because I find the information is much more easily accessible when it's in front of me on a spreadsheet. So I've done some, I've taught myself a fair bit about Excel and used it to a fairly high level. So, but yeah, I don't think I'll go any further than that into the database region. But no, it served me well.
You're doing the rugby league God's work yourself and anyone else going that deep. But I did want to ask about your, I guess, decade or so with Rugby League Week as a full-time reporter. Sort of many people probably forget that you were what a talented writer you are, and that you were on the Rugby League beat as a reporter. How do you look back on those years as probably quite a young guy?
They were great times. It was really my first job out of school, working at Rugby League Week, and I came in contact with Ian Heads just when he was starting as the managing editor at Rugby League Week. So I had a dream run, and working at that place at that time, it was unbelievable, because it was just like I know I used these words at Ian's service nearly 12 months ago, and just recalling what great times they were. But it was just like a revolving door of rugby league greats and former players and media people, English tourists who'd pop by and just to come and say hello to Ian, because they'd built up great friendships on the World Cup and Kangaroo tours in previous years. And we'd go out either to the pub or we'd go and have a meal or whatever. And Ian was always inviting us all along. And just to hear the great stories about Vince Corellius and McTeague and all the great English players from the tours past, it was an education for me. It was just an incredible learning period. Great place to work. I started out writing about the lower grade teams in the mid 1980s, and doing the odd feature story as well, and covering first grade games for about 10 years. So it was just a great experience in days when you got access to players, which is so much better than it is today. They were great times.
Really was the golden age of the magazine. That the 80s, your circulation was off the charts. And you weren't, Rugby League Week wasn't afraid to take the big issues head on. Is there any times that you sort of got offside with any clubs or players? I imagine you're probably one of the less feisty journos on the Rugby League Week.
Yes. I think if you didn't upset someone along the way, you're probably not doing your job. But I've had the odd angry phone call along the way. I know I upset Balmain after the '89 grand final when I quoted David Brooks, who was one of the reserves who didn't get a run after that game, and he was not happy after full time, as you would expect. He said, what were we supposed to do, to sit there playing with ourselves or something? And I remember Keith Barnes rang me up angry after the game and said, you've done a great hatchet job on David Brooks and the rest of it. So I've had a couple of phone calls doing the annuals, even writing big league previews. I upset a coach from a preview to a game one day. So, that happens, par for the course.
Great times, and obviously very sad to I guess see the demise of Rugby League Week and big league magazines. Just I guess a sign of the times. just moving on to the Warriors, obviously a Warriors podcast. I just wanted to get your view as someone that knows, the game inside out since 1908. Your broader view of the Warriors as a club from their first 30 seasons, just in a historical context. Obviously, they got a reputation for chronic underachievement. There's probably been more highs along the way than most people are, willing to remember or accept. And the last sort of since 2011 grand final, it's been fairly slim pickings. Obviously, the COVID period was very difficult. We've had a phenomenal resurgence over the last couple of years, popularity-wise. Another dip in form on the field, but 30 years on, and I guess I sort of look at it through the lens of some of the other clubs and where they were at 30 years, and how sort of entrenched they were as a premiership club. How do you view the Warriors 30 years on?
I've just been thinking about it since you asked me to come on today, and I think back to pre-Warriors years and of people like Graham Lowe, who were always had that big picture view. Like I can recall when he was coaching New Zealand against Australia in the early 1980s, when he was talking then about New Zealand entering the premiership and how important it was for them to do something like that, to be part of it. And look, when I think of the Warriors, I think of I think they've, yes, disappointment that they haven't won a premiership. I think that they probably should have. They probably deserve to over time, and they've probably fallen a little bit short in not having achieved that. But in saying that, they've had some incredible adversity over time as well. I mean, the club was just about out the door in 1999, around the turn of the century. They were broke. Their ownership model was all over the place. So they've had that adversity. They've had the adversity of COVID, which really could have destroyed a club that didn't have that strength behind it. And also they've had to overcome the fortnightly battle of international travel, which no other club has had to confront. I know the Warriors are prepared for it. They plan for it, but it's still not easy. It's still something that they have to do, and it's a tough on young players. When the Warriors were so successful in the Toyota Cup, I think that was a great grounding for the young players getting used to the travel, which they really don't have at the moment. But look, when I think of the Warriors football as well, I think they've played some extraordinary football. I think about going back to players like Carlos Tumavave and Ali Latiti and the talent that they had within their frames, their sizable frames, and that some of the football that the Warriors have played over the years, I don't think any other club has been capable of playing some of the type of football that they've played. Sustaining it over time has been a hassle for them. They should have had more consistency in reaching finals as well. They've had a good year every now and then they fall away. And I guess that is a great disappointment to fans, and you just see how much the fans get behind them. I don't think we've had a team in the history of the game that sold out every home game in a season. So that is a unique achievement by the club, but it's something that they need to use to build on and for success in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of get a little bit my back up about people saying they've been a basket case for 30 years. I think from 2001, 2011, 7 final series in 11 seasons, 4 prelims, a couple of grand finals. That's sort of just below that sort of top bracket of teams during that period. Sort of Storm Roosters, Manly ahead of them in those categories. But they did have a decade there where they really were consistently up there, knocking on the door, just couldn't quite get the premiership, and then obviously since then it hasn't gone to plan, despite some false dawns and the like. But I think we're all just still hopeful and grateful that the club is in the position it is in off the field. Just it's a great base to build off. Hopefully, might be a couple of painful years in the term.
It took Parramatta 34 years to win their first premiership. It took Penrith over 20 years to win their first title. there have been clubs that have gone a lot longer without winning premiership than the Warriors. So, they've just got to keep making the finals, and then eventually they'll get lucky. That's what it takes, essentially, is to have one of those seasons where you're not getting injured and things are coming together for you. Make the finals, and then you're every chance. So, if they can do that, they're a good enough club to win a premiership. There's no risk about that.
Now, onto something that's probably a bit more in, I guess, both of our wheelhouses. I'm not sure if you've come up with anything at this short notice, but I did want to ask you about your sort of favourite statistical or historical anomalies relating to the Warriors.
Got a couple. I like the Francis Melly record of 5 tries in a finals game. He's the only player who's ever done that. There was a fellow by the name of Edgar Newham who scored 5 for Canterbury, but it was in a playoff for the finals back in the 1940s. Francis's achievement, 5 tries in a finals match, unique, and he was a Warrior at the time against Canterbury. It was at the old showground, or the Sydney showground, in about 2002, I think it was.
Yeah, 03, that one. You'd have just about been jumping out of your box at the stadium there with that record breaking.
I reckon I was in Townsville that night for there was
for the other one
game on. And the other one is a unique record that the Warriors will have for a short period, maybe a year or two. In about 6 weeks' time, when they play in Las Vegas, they will be the only club who have played at the southernmost venue, being Dunedin, and the northernmost venue being Las Vegas. So until Canterbury play in Las Vegas in a couple of years' time, whenever that may be, the Warriors will be the only club who's played at the southernmost and the northernmost venues in premiership history.
Yeah, how good's that? What a great stat to pull out. I knew you'd have something for us. That's fantastic. Mine a couple of mine are probably a bit more vanilla, but I just loved Manu Vatave's 10 tries in 10 consecutive seasons. First player to ever do it. I think you'll be able to correct me, but I think Ken Irvine was the only player to have done it 9 times in a row. Then had an injury-wrecked season. Just love that for Manu. Just the consistency and getting over the line, but also that durability. And he did have a lot of injuries, but he still managed to get on the field enough times in every one of those seasons to get over the line 10 times. He actually started the season before the streak started, scored 9 tries, so it could have been slightly longer. But it's one of my favourite individual records. The fact that the Warriors have a reputation as being big underachievers and I guess some terrible seasons as well. The fact that they got 0 wooden spoons in their 30 years. The only current teams without a wooden spoon: Manly, St George Illawarra, and the Dolphins, along with the Warriors. I think that's correct. There might be some extinct clubs that might not have picked up the spoon, but we quite like to hold on to that little nugget.
Manly's record there, I think.
Manly, incredible. They haven't had one in 77 years or so. And one that I came across recently, the Warriors back in 2001, 2002 scored double figures in 47 consecutive games, just edging out the previous premiership record held by Cronulla in 95, 96. They did in 46 games in a row. Pretty impressive, but they didn't hang on to the record for that long. Penrith started a streak in 2002 that ran until 2004 of 62 games. But for that brief period in time, the Warriors had a nice little premiership record to hang on to. Not sure they would have known it or anyone known it at the time, but not bad. Mind them putting a streak like that together again. Moving on from the Warriors, David, I have to ask you, having you on here, your favourite records, or the premiership's most unbreakable records, the ones that you just think they could potentially stand forever.
I guess you're looking at the age records, the ones that'll stand the test of time. I don't think we'll ever see a 16-year-old in first grade again. you have to be 18 before you're allowed to play. You can play under a special dispensation. We saw Joseph Suali'i on his debut was still 17, but I think the days of 16-year-olds are out. And I don't know if you'll see another 40-year-old. I mean, Daly Cherry Evans is still going well. He's the only player born in the 1980s who will be playing in 2025. He turns 36 this year, but playing at 40, I just don't know. And Billy Wilson did that as a Captain Blood, they called him. In 1967, he was still playing for North Sydney after he debuted in 1948. So was a career that spanned 20 seasons. I don't think we'll see that again. And look, I think it'll be a very special player who's going to come along and break Cameron Smith's appearance record, which he holds by 58 games, which is just about 3 seasons of football, more than anyone who's ever played the game. We've almost had 10,000 premiership players. So I think it will be a very special player that comes along to beat that record. I thought Ken Irvine's try-scoring record was safe, but Alex Johnston's still got a foot in the door there, depending on how he comes back from that Achilles injury. And it's going to be a difficult one to get there. If he doesn't do it this year, he's off contract at South, and he might need to find another club. Who knows what will happen there? It'll be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, I thought Billy was going to run Ken Irvine down at one stage, and then the injury started to sort of chop him down late in his career, and potentially the same with Alex Johnston. But my ones, I think Dave Brown, the Eastern Suburbs centre, the Bradman of League from the 1930s, is 2 records that I absolutely love. Premiership record for most tries in a season, 38, and he did it in only 15 games. Is probably playing against some pretty dusty opposition, held him along, but I think it was quite a big deal for stats nerds like me, and I'm sure you were excited about it as well when people started scoring 30 tries in a season again, just a little sort of pocket of them in 2021. But yeah, to get to 38, just the consistency and obviously playing enough games to score that many tries. It's a far more competitive comp as well. Also in that season, 45 points in a game hasn't really been approached. Dave Brown did it 38 points in a game in that same season, and then Big Mal 38 points in 1990, but no one's really looked like getting too close to it. Would have been 50 points under the current scoring system as well, 5 tries, 15 goals. So it'd obviously be a very exciting one. If that was ever to get broken, I remember Josh, I spoke to you not long before it happened, but it was for an article for Big League talking about all these try scoring records that have just stood for so long, despite all the point scoring records being broken quite a bit in modern history and appearances records. But yeah, no one had scored 6 tries for, was it 60 odd years by the time Josh Adokar got 6 in a game.
1950, I think it was Jack Troy, as a former Australian winger playing for Newtown. He scored 6 tries in a premiership game, and that's a long time in between drinks for no one scored 5 tries for Melbourne, but Adokar he went one better.
Yeah, outstanding. And we'll round this off, David, with another Warriors question. How do you think the Warriors will go in 2025? What sort of headline do you think you'll be putting at the top of their chapter in the 2025 official Rugby League annual?
Yeah, good question. How they'll perform post Sean Johnson, post Adam Fanua-Blake, but I think they've probably done pretty well out of that negotiation, haven't they? Like picking up James Fisher-Harris and losing Fanua-Blake. I don't know if they've lost very much there at all. Look, they've just got so much talent in the halves and just getting it together and not having the injuries. Look, I really like Metcalf as a 5'8". He's just got that speed. He's been struck down by injury the last couple of years. Be great to see Roger, continuing to produce some of his best football. I think they're top 8. They're top 8, but they probably need a little bit of luck with injuries as well. You can't be, I guess, one of those teams fighting for a place in the 8 and have a run of injuries as well. That would knock them flat. They're definitely top 8 material. whether it happens or not. We have to wait and see over a long 26, 27 week season. They always benefit through the origin period. But yeah, the key is the injury situation. I've got them in my 8.
Well, I'll take that optimism. I don't have them in my 8, but I would love them to get there, and I think that would be a pretty solid pass mark coming off the season they've just had, and obviously Sean Johnson, Adam Fanua-Blake, although they have, as you said, brought in a pretty solid replacement there, but in Tohu Harris as well, it sort of just gives me pangs of 2018 into 19 when Sean Johnson left that time and Simon Mannering also retired. So, you take your wizard playmaker and your heart and soul back row out of the team. It can be tough to adjust, but yeah, hopefully they've got enough behind the scenes and in the tank to get back to the finals.
I can't come on here and say they're not going to make it.
Well, we'll be checking any of your top 8 predictions in other publications, and if you don't have them in your 8, we're going to come after you, mate. But no, I really appreciate your time, David. As I said, a hero of mine and a huge influence, and just thank you for everything you've done for the game and I guess people like me for our jobs to be 1,000 times easier than they otherwise would be over the years. Yeah, go by that annual, everyone. It's fantastic and great to have a record of each season. But yeah, in the meantime, we'll enjoy your great work, and yeah, good luck for the upcoming season.
Good on you, Will. Thank you for having me on.
Our pleasure. Thanks, mate.